Welcome to Asenso Tayo Leaders, where we bring you real stories from leaders like you so you can lead with more clarity, direction, and confidence.
Good morning, Maria. How are you today?
Hello, Becky. I'm great. How about you? How's your weekend?
It was wonderful. I just got back from Sydney. My wife was up for an award, so we got to get all dressed
Oh,
up and
yeah.
fly down to Sydney to go to the gala. So yeah, we had a lovely weekend.
Yeah, I'm sure it was also a bit of a date,
It
not
was,
just an
yes, we
award. Yeah.
you're exactly right. Yeah, lovely meal. I think at those things, your experience is so much dictated by who you sit with. Sometimes you sit with people who just don't want to talk and it can really ruin your evening. But we were very lucky to be sat at the table with these really friendly, open people who were successful business people, but also really fun. So we actually had a really fun night, which was, you know, that's 90% of it, right? We're here to have fun.
You know what? When Aussies say fun, always in my mind associated with drinking.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
Okay.
I can't disagree with you on that.
Okay.
And yeah, part of that fun was after the gala was over, we went to another bar to have a few cleansing ales. So yes, you are correct in your guess there.
Yeah.
So we're actually recording this intro. Usually what we do is we will have an interview or a conversation and do the intro afterwards. But we ran out of time to do that with our most recent guest, James Thompson from WrkPod, because the chat was so good, it went for so long, and it actually went overtime. So we didn't have the time to record the intro. So we're actually recording this a week or so later. But part of the benefit of that chat going overtime and being so long is that there was so much good stuff in there, we decided we couldn't do it in one episode. So that is actually going to be a two-part episode, and you are listening to this intro at the start of part one of that two-part series. Now, Maria, I know in the lead up to having James on the podcast, you were really excited about him as a guest, a little bit nervous because of the experience and I suppose the pedigree and the amazing career that he's had. But I'd love to just ask how overall, at the end of the two parts, how the experience was for you of chatting to James.
Oh my gosh, there were so many points in there that got me reflecting, really. It was like a one-on-one conversation with a guru, which I'm sure James would never say he's a guru. Like you can tell the humility and all, but it's really great to hear from him, like his story, some challenges as well, despite all of his experience up his sleeves. It really makes me think about, we're not perfect individuals. There's always going to be something, but it's just really how you kind of like levitate yourself from a difficult situation and find an opportunity there. So I'm not going to go through that. But in general, oh my gosh, I told you back, I was jumping up and down. I was so hyped about it. I'm so excited. So I can't wait for people to also hear it. And I think that will be another goosebumps moment for the guys.
Absolutely. I have to open up to the leaders listening to this. Maria, at the end of our interview, like when we kind of stopped recording, her energy was off the chart. I could
Oh yeah.
feel it, like the floor of my office trembling with how excited Maria was. And for me, it almost felt like the moment where Maria went, oh my gosh, I'm a podcaster. Like until now, we've been doing these chats and having these wonderful conversations, but there's always a bit of that, that imposter syndrome and that like, am I doing this right? And, you're just kind of like feeling uncomfortable the whole time, but you're doing your best. Whereas I feel like, Maria, you at the end of this one, just had this moment where you're like, oh my gosh, that was such a great chat. And, we've done it. Like we've produced like such a great episode here. And yeah, you just seemed so I don't know. I've never seen you as excited as you were at
And
the
I
end of
tell
that.
you what, I sent Danielle a message to tell her, oh my God, this is so amazing. Like I came out of a podcast with Becky and James Thompson and like I'm sure she was kind of like, oh, what the hell happened to her?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go have a lie down, Maria.
Yeah.
But no, it was so cool to see your energy at the end of it. So I suppose broadly speaking, we've divided the episode into two parts. The first part is really about James's story and his career journey and how he's got to the place that he's at now. And then what will part two be all about, Maria?
Yes. So part two, I'd say a lot of leadership hacks that James will be unpacking. I'm not going to go into detail, but definitely there's a lot of golden nuggets in those conversations talking about what ready means, for example. The guys who attended our master class will also find this as somehow tailor fitting to our previous episodes. So, yeah, can't wait to that. And also about strengths of Filipino leaders. It was highlighted there as well. I think it's a good reminder for my fellow Filipino leaders out there who think like, oh, I'm not good enough, things like that. But there's actually a lot of strengths that James Thompson mentioned, which would be a good reminder and a good pat at the back for you guys. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think something I thanked James for at the end was just how authentic and open he was. And sometimes you meet someone in a work context and you meet them outside of work and they're completely different people. Whereas James is just one of those guys who I think is the same in every situation. And it's so refreshing to hang out with someone who is very much themselves and
Yes.
successful at the same time. And it's lovely, looking at someone like that and going, oh, I can just be myself and potentially be successful as well. It's actually really refreshing to spend time with someone so successful yet so humble. I felt like the part one that you're about to listen to is almost like his superhero origin story. You hear about the trials and the challenges, and I think that was probably what I appreciated so much about James being so open is he didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't just give us the highlights reel of his career. He gives us the warts and all. And there's some pretty tough moments for him in that first episode where he shares some really challenging times. And personally, I found it just such a great reminder that you can look at someone like a James and go, oh, they're so successful. And yeah, things are easy for people like that. Why are things so hard for me? But it's this actual great reminder that we all struggle and we all have challenges. And really, our career and our life is defined by how we respond to those challenges.
Yes.
And that's what James is going to give you a very, very intimate understanding of in this part one. So, plenty of ups, but also some real challenges. And yeah, I think you're going to just really get to know James on a different level. For those of you who kind of know him, you're going to get to know him better. But for those of you who don't know him, I think you're going to hear a really great story of a phenomenal leader. And then in part two, you'll get to hear more of those leadership nuggets and those real pieces of gold that you can take into your leadership and can help you upgrade your leadership game. I think we've done enough talking, Maria. What do you reckon?
Oh gosh, let's get into it, Becky. Come on.
Beautiful. Introducing part one of our chat with the incredible James Thompson from WrkPod.
Hello, good morning, Becky.
How are you, Maria?
I'm good. I'm very excited for this episode. Something very new to us.
Yes, first external guest.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go to the good part. So today, we are honored to welcome an inspiring executive whose leadership journey spans an impressive array of industries, from local government and tourism to aged care, agribusiness, and now the dynamic world of IT-BPM. He now runs his own consultancy and as an executive director at his son's business, which is WrkPod, and they are a company that helps connect talented Filipino professionals with business across the globe. WrkPod has expanded tremendously, Becky, over the past 12 months and now aiming to hit 10,000 jobs for Filipinos in the next couple of years. Oh my gosh, so exciting. And we're excited to have a chat with James. And without further ado, let's all welcome Mr. James Thompson.
Hey,
Welcome, James.
thanks, Michael. Thanks, Maria. That's fantastic. It's lovely to join you both, and I'm delighted to be able to impart some of what I'm all about and what WrkPod's all about to emerging and currently Filipino leaders. So hopefully I can have some wisdom to impart to your audience.
I am sure you can. I think there's so many interesting areas we want to take our chat because you've got, the WrkPod side of things. 5Elk work really closely with WrkPod. So looking forward to digging in a little bit more there. You've got so much leadership wisdom. We've also just got like adjusting to life in the Philippines, which I think is going to be really interesting. We'd love to hear more about that. But I suppose to get started, maybe just to bring our listeners up to speed, would like to understand a bit more about your career journey. So in a nutshell, where did it start? Where is it headed since then? And how did you get to the point where you're working with WrkPod?
Yeah, well, where did it start? I actually I'm a country boy raised on a small country farm, 700 acres in central Victoria. We're 2.5 hours north of Melbourne, so right down the bottom of Australia. And so raised on a farm and came out of there into high school. And the last couple of years of high school, I got steered into sciences, and I was doing really well in humanities and commerce and that sort of thing in Form 4 then, but the principal steered my mum that I should do sciences. I came out of high school with full sciences, and I tried to get into the Royal Australian Air Force in a technical capacity. My aptitude is not in technology as such, but I came out of high school and picking tomatoes with young friends as we'd left high school, and my mum come and dragged me from the tomato field and to an interview at the local council office in local government. So that was my first career in local government, and my life is determination. And it's something that I got into local government, and some of the senior staff were saying, look, you can study in this area and make a career out of the local government. So which I did, and I did my diploma in through the RMIT in Melbourne in business studies, majoring in local government. And I was at a young age of 23, I was the executive, I was assistant town clerk and one of the directors of the city of Castlemaine in central Victoria at 23. And I was doing my studies and qualified, and I came out at 25 as a Shire Secretary, Shire Manager, and then CEO in local government at a very young age. So that was the start of my career in my executive career. And from local government, I spent some time in aged care, regional Vision Australia, who provides service to the vision impaired throughout the country. I was regional manager there for a couple of years, and then 5 years in a heritage tourism trust in the city of Bendigo, a city the size similar to Dumaguete, 140,000. 5 years there running a tourism operation, which was a real working gold mine and real tramway system. Tramway systems are very prominent through many areas in Australia. So 5 years there, and then I was actually ran just before that business. I was running my own small adventure tourism business called Major Mitchell Adventures. I ran that for 3 years and operating for the short break market out of Melbourne for people wanting to get out and have a good time in the country. So yeah, I've done many things outside tourism. Then I went into re-educated myself and did my Masters of Business Administration at the University of Melbourne, the Melbourne Business School. And from there, I landed in agribusiness, food manufacturing, and a company called Hazeldene's, which processes chickens. And when I came in, the business was doing something like $120 million per annum turnover, and 12 years later was turning over something like 250 million and processing around 600,000 chickens a week. So it was a monster business. So I remember I sat down with the managing director, the owner, and when I first came into the business in a marketing role, and he said, look, I don't know what you're going to do, but I was one of the first external people into the business from the family. And the business grew tremendously over a 12-year period. So I rose up through marketing manager, a general manager, and then to CEO. And then I moved on from that business to staying in agribusiness into vegetables and salads, a business called Coolabah Herbs down in the Mornington Peninsula. So a very big, extensive business of 250 staff, properties down in the Mornington Peninsula area and up on the Murray River. So the operation could actually farm across the full year cycle in seasonal conditions. And then from there, I landed in a duck business called Duck. My world has been very much a matrix. And like many years ago, you could come in and do one job and be there for life. Yeah, my career has been very much a career of snakes and ladders. And then, of course, landed one Friday, finished my contract at Duck, and then talking to Cody, my son, who is a co-founder, CEO of WrkPod. And he said, look, Dad, I'm going to the Philippines on Tuesday. Do you want to come? So I came along to the Philippines with Cody and landed in Dumaguete, and yeah, it was extraordinary. Like, you talk to your kids, and I'd talk to Cody a couple of times a month on the phone, his web development business and the like. And I knew it started into the WrkPod operation, but I didn't really have a real sense of the scope and scale that one he got to with his web development business, and then what morphed out of his web development business into WrkPod.
I love that analogy of snakes and ladders. I think that's really cool. And I'm going to come back and ask you about the snakes, because I think that's super interesting territory and often not the part of our career or leadership that we share. But let's focus on the ladders for now. What I find interesting is I think, particularly when we're early in our career and perhaps young and inexperienced, we think we're going to have this perfectly mapped out career plan and we'll start here and then move here. And it very rarely plays out that way. And just hearing your career story, I mean, you could have asked 1 million people at the start of your career to predict it, and no one would have predicted that sequence of events. So, what I'm interested in is like each step of the way, how have you made decisions about where you're going next and what that next step in your career is? Has it just been a situation where you've kind of accidentally fallen into these things, or has there been some kind of intentional direction to what you've done?
Look, certainly once I got embedded in local government, as I said, I'm a very determined type of character. So I'm very fixed on always improving, trying to get better and make something better of myself. I don't pretend to be a perfect human being, but trying to get better. So coming into and learning about local government, and then I was encouraged to study and become a qualified. So that is a segment of my life. Again, I wanted to take the elevator. I wanted to walk the staircase of improvement. So it was just a natural progression to do my studies, do them well, become qualified, and then progress through my career in local government in the state of Victoria to qualify and be in that executive role that I was in. And it was a small little rural shire that I was in, and only 3,000 people, yet the organisation won 2 national awards for innovation.
Wow.
In the time that I was there. And I really credit the community and the council. I was always someone to stretch the boundaries myself in what I did and try and get better. So if I look at that as segments of my career and then hopping into the aged care industry, which came out after I'd done my MBA. So I used that as an opportunity to re-educate myself, invest in myself. And there are fundamentals that you do, doesn't really matter what it is, that apply to any business. So that's the beauty of what I did with my education in doing my master's and exposing me to that network of people, that I didn't have that fear. I'm not saying I didn't have the fear before, but I had the great level of confidence to go out into that bigger world, if you like.
It sounds to me like at each step of the way, you haven't thought too much about what's next. It's like, I've got an opportunity here. I'm just going to do the absolute best I can and bring all that determination and push myself as hard as I can, do something I'm proud of here. And then that has opened up doors for you in other areas. Would that be fair to say?
We perhaps have all heard a lot about it's important to live in the moment. And I think that captures, once I was investing myself in that area of business, is to actually live in that, breathe it, and get better every day. So yeah, try my best to live in the moment like I am in here in WrkPod at the moment. I can recall going to this Rotary seminar once, and this evangelistic type of speaker from the US was there and talking about having his goals in his pocket, and that every day he'd get up and look at those and, you know, the things he had to achieve. Well, I'm not of that mindset. I'm of the mindset of actually being present in what I do and improve every day and being open then to opportunities that come your way.
I think that's a really interesting attitude, because I think, yes, so much of the conventional wisdom is have goals. And there's a really great book by Eckhart Tolle called The Power of Now. And it's like, there is no past, there is no future. There is only this moment now. And it seems like you've either deliberately or accidentally found your way to that wisdom.
Yes, I've read his books, and trying to live in the moment is so important. If you sat still on the hill and just look at the clouds in front of you, perhaps at times you're far better off.
I love that. And I think that's a great segue into the next question we had for you. That's something that Maria and I have noticed too, is that you haven't just decided to sit in Victoria and advise WrkPod from afar. You've taken that step to immerse yourself in it, and you've moved to the other side of the world to get involved in WrkPod and help it realize its vision. So would love to understand more about how that came to be. What was it about that made you decide that this was your next move, and what are you doing day to day at WrkPod at the moment?
Well, that's one of the snakes, in the sense that concluding my contract with the Duck business, the business had gone through a lot of change. I started there just prior to the pandemic. So you can imagine going in agribusiness in the perishable world with the pandemic, created enormous turmoil when you think that the governments, and like this day rings in my head, it's a bit like where were you when the Twin Towers came down? Well, where were you when in Australia the national government effectively on the 19th of March 2020 effectively closed the food service industry and only left it open to the big supermarket chains. So the Duck business lost 70% of its sales overnight.
Wow.
When you think you've got all these ducks and animals out in the field that you've still got to you've still got to feed, care for, and then process. So then you can imagine, and we could talk a whole podcast about this. So going through a lot of change with the Duck business through the pandemic. I was there just under 4 years, and then the directors were under a lot of stress too through that period and came out the other side. It's quite ironic because through that period, the business had its best financial performance it ever had in its history because it had a little bit of a toehold in the supermarket segment. And so, yeah, and through that, we actually built a new $25 million value-added processing plant. So there's a lot of things happening in that 4 years. But coming out of that, directors were exhausted through it all and wanted to actually sell. So we went through then a sale process that never worked after finishing my contract there. And it was this sliding door moment where literally I rang Cody on the Friday and told him what, I was finished at Duck and I'd have a little bit of a breather and see what I wanted to do. And he said, look, Dad, yeah, I'm flying to the Philippines Tuesday. Come with me. It was really another sliding door moment. And through that period too, unfortunately, with so much change, and I'm probably not the only one coming out of the pandemic with a marriage breakdown, but
Very true.
so yeah, that created another situation for me about actually sitting back and reflecting on, what I do with my life. Coming out with Cody and just seeing what he was doing and resting with him in the moment of what he was doing in helping transforming lives of the young Filipinos in the community was just heartwarming.
Yeah. And I mean, this is something that, Maria, you're so embedded in the Philippines that you may not see it with this perspective, but I often feel like there's this magic when you come to the Philippines and it's hard to describe. And when you go back to Australia, it's almost no words can really capture it for the people around you of how special it is. But there's definitely something special happening over there at the moment. It's almost addictive. It's just something that draws you in and makes you want to be a part of it. So I'm not surprised that flight has turned into a more permanent life move for you.
Cody said one time we were here talking and he said, Dad, he said, it's like we've captured lightning in a jar.
Oh,
Wow, powerful.
This is after I'd been here some time. We're at a strategy planning session. He said, Dad, and I thought just the magic of you saying what you just said just captures. And I don't want to get religious as such, but the last Christmas, I was with the staff and the HR manager, as you would all know, Maria knows, the locals love a celebration, having fun and getting together. And of course, we've gone through all these Christmas functions, activities, and the HR manager said on one Saturday, this particular Saturday before we all left for Christmas, she said, there's a 6-hour Saturday we're all going to spend together. So Michael, as an Australian, you probably know what's running through my mind. I'm sitting there thinking, what are we going to do for 6 hours?
no, the Aussies are thinking, oh gosh, that's a lot of drinking. 6 hours. I don't know if I'm going to still be standing. That's how Aussies are thinking.
For Filipinos, there's a lot involved.
Yes, food and game. And that's the 6 hours when the gifts, the 6 hours went in a breeze. I got up to say some closing words. I was invited to say some words, and I actually talked about the magic. And I actually said, I do want to be religious in a sense, because there is a foundation of Catholicism, Christianity through the Philippines, which is a great strength. And that's what I think is part of the magic. And I said, yeah, there's this feeling of the Holy Spirit without question in a way. But yeah, it's very special. It's very special.
You could probably put whatever label you want on it, but it's all the same thing. It's like, it's something we all intimately understand, right?
Yeah.
Because we feel it.
You feel it. You feel
Yeah.
it.
And actually, James, I've got goosebumps all over because when you spoke about COVID, like I know there were many people in businesses who were not able to recover, quite frankly, and probably until now, are still trying mentally, are still also trying to cope up with a personal life and stuff like that. I'm really quite amazed at how the impact of, just jumping into the Philippines and how it made a change in yourself and maybe
had that opportunity to be with your son and all. And probably what I want to ask is, what was that like? Is it more about I'm just curious because Michael back mentioned, many Filipinos might not realize, but probably I'd like to know more about what is it with the Filipino culture? Is it the community? Is it the coconut trees? Is it the balut? Is it the
Calamansi.
I'll eat lechon, no problems. Look, I think in one word, simplicity, because Australians can be a little bit, to each other blunt, very much action. You can appreciate where I come from in a 24/7 cycle perishable business where time is money and you leave perishables out on the dry dock without quickly going into the refrigerated truck. You've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we can be a bit fairly blunt in the manner in which we may speak. Professional, but we can be blunt. So I've got to check myself in this culture to soften myself a lot more. I'm very much an empathetic, caring, persuasive sort of leader, but I've got to ensure that I check myself. So, but yeah, the culture is very much, to me, there's more this simplicity in life. That's all you can think of. You're not thinking about what happened last week and the issue at work or what's going to happen next week in business or your personal life. You are in the moment. But to me, Philippines, very much simplicity and ease and flow, and perhaps more times for me in the moment.
I'm sure a lot of Filipinos who would be hearing this would also, oh, wow, that's it. That's the answer. Like many are so curious as well that Becky came here and also visited us. And Becky was also giving us a very powerful message about how passionate he is as well. So I think this kind of like sums up our understanding. That's really, the community and the difference of our culture to yours probably gave a little bit of that magic touch. I just want to chat, James, like at this moment with WrkPod, what is it that you do? Your role, like, what do you do in a day to day? I'm just curious because I've seen you in iGrow and I was like, hey, James. And then you're everywhere. You talk to the internal team, you high five with everybody, even to the guards, you know their names. But really, what do you do?
Not very much, Maria.
Yeah.
Don't tell them though. What
It's
do
a
I do?
secret. No one will listen to this, I promise. It just stays between the three of us.
What do I do? First and foremost is that I do my best. It is very hard because he's a very much a values-based leader. Cody's an actual trained pastor. He had very much a heartbreak for him at 16 when he had young friends in school commit suicide. And out of that came his desire to help youth. He volunteered into schools and programs, and like he got involved in the church and in a youth pastorship role. So he's very much values-based. And to that point, the whole purpose of WrkPod is to transform lives. At the end of the day, a business has got to be profitable. We've got to be sustainable, sure, but our whole driving purpose for what we do, what Cody does, his co-founder Dale does, is to transform lives, is to provide careers, and not just any career, careers that provide young people with opportunity. It's a big, wide world out there, and the world of opportunity that they can actually advance their career in front of a laptop working digitally. They can start off in one role, being an admin assistant. They too can rise up to be a virtual CIO, CTO for a corporate, halfway the other end of the world. Back to the point about what do I do is that I try and mirror Cody, and I'm far from that, but very much I'm Cody's eyes and ears in country. So he's got a conduit through me that seeing the world in country that he sees from his farm without disrespecting organisational structure. So as executive director, I sit between Cody and the executive manager and CFO of WrkPod. I try my best to, without being autocratic or in the sense that my leadership is around trying to be, again, a means for a staircase of improvement where I can impart my knowledge and mentorship and coaching to the other members of the team. Obviously, there's a lot of strategic, tactical stuff that I'm involved with, but I try very much for the staff are there, they're in their positions, doing through their own reporting structures, and where I can help and provide some advice and wisdom, I'll put my hand up to do anything. If they need me to go and paint the back fence, I'll go and paint the back fence for the rest of the staff. If they need me to go and cut a ribbon somewhere and represent Cody, I'll go and do that. So that's my role. And increasingly, I'm becoming more involved in, as we broaden ourselves across the countryside, broader networks outside Dumaguete. I've met some fabulous people that will support WrkPod in its endeavours, because we're now part of, our Vision 10,000 is part of the greater Negros Island region. So I don't do really much, do I?
No, you do. In fact, you recently have an executive managers club, right? You had your first
yeah.
session.
That's right. We've established our what we call WrkPod's Exclusive Managers Club. Well, it's not WrkPods as such. We're facilitating. And of course, 5 Elk is represented there with one of your senior performance coaches, Bell. So what we decided to do is try and, so that we've got all these great businesses within WrkPod, again, all these neurons and capacities of good leaders, great leaders, to actually bring them together and try and actually help us again. And that's a great reflection of what Cody's all about, Dale's all about, I'm about, is collaboration. How we can actually learn from each other and support each other's business to grow. And we've had our first meeting. They're all outstanding 16 people around the table. Some great conversation. And I just try and be a facilitator in that with some of my own learning experiences in my 30 years of executive management. But to be able to see these businesses scale up and grow, and again, we're providing a means to transform people. We're all of us are providing a means to transform people's lives.
When I heard about that, I thought it was potentially like a leadership program that you were rolling out, but it sounds to me like it's more like a peer learning environment. And I see a lot of leaders make where they think they need to be the expert and have all the answers, and it's all about them like teaching people. But actually, one of the most powerful things that a leader can do is just create the right environment for someone to ask the right questions of themselves and listen to what their answer is. And it's more of that coach rather than a manager. It's more of that coach hat. And so I just would love to hear your thoughts on the importance of coaching and the power of coaching, and also what makes a good coach, because I think it's something that a lot of leaders potentially haven't had exposure to, but they want to be better at coaching, but they're just not quite sure what that means.
Well, yeah, you're the coach, you're off the field, aren't you? You can't influence, you can't be sort of directing people and saying, and then putting your boots on yourself and running on the ground and grabbing the ball and kicking the goal. You've got to be gentle and persuasive. I've come back to the sporting analogy. When I first was playing football, and like you had the yelling, screaming, there was that traditional command and control structure of leadership. Whereas today, it's much more gentle, persuasive, and trying to help lift people up rather than being too directive, providing the education and tools. And the coach himself, herself, can actually learn so much from the knowledge of those around the table who come from different generations. So, yeah, that's the best way I'd like to describe it, Michael.
And so that's what you're trying to create through the Executive Managers Club?
Yeah, very much. Co-founder Dale, as you know, who's one of Australia's most outstanding leading business coaches, he asked how it went for the day, and I'd written up all his content, but I think I only got halfway through it.
Yeah.
And I think that was the beauty, to be able to start off conversations and then they could randomly lead off to other areas, and people were just totally engaged and participating in what we were doing. I don't want to create that rule of, we've got 1 to 12 things and we've got to get through that. This is a sort of a general program of what we're doing, what we want to discuss at each session that we'll do, and see where those things lead. I was very much impressing upon each other to lean in on each other. So now that they know these other people across the table, if they see each other in the corridor now, don't just wave and smile and say good day and pass by. Stop and sit with each other. But then as you build this knowledge of each other, if issues do come up, don't be afraid to jump on the email or the phone and say, hey, have you got a couple of minutes, without giving up private and confidential information of the business? Look, I've got this situation. What would you do? Learn from each other.
And there's just so much power too in, I think a lot of the time people can figure out a solution to a problem, particularly if they speak to the right people. But the problem is they get so stuck in the day-to-day that they don't create the space to even consider the problem, let alone start to think about how to solve it. And so I think there's just magic too in creating a space, whether that's a one-on-one meeting with someone in your team or something more structured like the Executive Managers Club, where people can just actually pause and not think about the day-to-day and actually just focus on improvement and the bigger things rather than the little day-to-day things.
Yeah, exactly. My brand represents who I am as a person is KISS, keep it simple, stupid. I'm a simple country farming guy. Quality in everything we do and accountability. And this is something that I will talk to them eventually about their own brand. In accountability sense, I've got them as an action to be an action I'm after every session that we do is I wanted them to actually think about what we'd actually spoken about for the 2-hour session and what they can do to actually improve the next 2 months until we next meet and what was a result of that and bring it back to the table and we all talk about it together.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's not just the talking about it, but actually doing it and applying it to their roles, right?
Yeah. And be accountable. So come back to the team. Collective is a club and talk about it. And if they've had any issues with applying what they wanted to apply, well, let's chat about it.
And that's it for part 1. Stay tuned for part 2 with James Thompson. That's coming up next. And this is where we unpack leadership lessons and best advice for leaders. And you don't want to miss it. Catch you next time, guys.